So before you can really hear someone else, you have to be calm because if you're not calm, you're not able to access the prefrontal cortex part of your brain. It's required to be able to really hear someone else. So that's what I teach first is the first thing to establish every single time you move into a conversation is you need to be relaxed and calm. And so that means if you're a salesperson and you're going into a sales call, you need to not be worried about, oh, I have to make this close because I need to make my quota. That has to not be on your mind at all. You just have to be calm, relaxed, and ready to listen and make sure that you're taking the time to put yourself in that space ahead. So that's the first piece is to be calm. And then the next piece I teach is what outcome is it that you're looking for from the conversation? I think a lot of times people forget to think about that ahead. And if we're talking specifically to sales, the outcome is highly likely you want to just sell to the next level. You're not looking to close a sale. A lot of times people jump all the way to the close. Don't do that. What's the next step? Just only sell to the next step. So, yeah.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H. Human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Deb Porter. Deb Porter believes that soft skills should be recoined to essential skills. An expert in active listening for over 25 years, she is the founder of Hold, Hearing Out Life Drama. Her mission is to educate others in active listening and emotional education for improvement in business and life. Congrats on hearing out life drama and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Karl. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, great to reconnect. So what is the number one desire of employees?
It's good communication. Isn't that amazing? That's what they desire above absolutely everything else. They want good communication with their leaders, with their colleagues. That's what they desire most. Good communication.
I think it's something that is just sorely lacking between employers and employees these days. And I think it's why people leave managers and it's why people don't feel connected to the work they do is because they're not communicated. There's this just kind of one-way decrees or just like silence. And I think it's really disrupting to the business's success.
It's interesting to me because most business owners understand when we say business is built on relationship. Most business owners nod their head with me. They go, yes, indeed. Business is built on relationship. They get that. And then when I say the foundation of that relationship is good communication, they nod again. And then when I say, and the foundation, the bedrock of that, the very essence of that good communication is active listening, then I see the light bulbs go on for people. They're like, aha, this is why this active listening that you're talking about is so important because it builds everything else. It's the very concrete underneath the rocks.
And so what is it that you think makes this what seems like an obvious fact to you and I or such an aha moment? Why do people not get that originally?
Well, I think, Karl, and I could be wrong, but active listening isn't taught in our schools as something that's important. It's from the time we were young, we were taught to listen, but not taught how to listen. And I think when some people start to talk about the importance of listening, there starts to be some almost discomfort because they're like, I wasn't ever taught. I don't know. What are you talking about? Like literally, I had somebody ask me in a call not long ago. She's like, I understand that active listening is important. My ex-spouse used to say to me, active listening is nodding and saying, yeah. She's like, I know that's not it. I'm like, you're right. No, it's not. But there's a disconnect about really understanding what is active listening. So let's just quick define it for people.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Okay, so really quickly, active listening is the art of connecting with both the content, that's the words spoken, and the emotion. If you only do one or the other, that's not active listening. You have to have both the words, the content of that, and the emotion, the feeling behind it. When you do that, then you're going somewhere with people. Then you're actually making that human connection that people are looking for.
And is there one side of those two things that people struggle with more? Are they better at hearing the words but not the emotions, or some people can consistently like one or the other that people are missing, or is it kind of a mixed bag depending on who you're working with?
I think it can go either way, right? If it's a board meeting and suddenly the words are difficult because it's something unexpected, then that's going to create feelings, which are then going to be hard to connect with. So I actually, now that I'm thinking about that deeply, I think it's probably the feelings behind it. I think the emotional intelligence required to do this well is probably what holds most people back.
Yeah, that's would have been my guess, but I figured you'd have a lot larger sample size of where you see people struggling. So I was interested in hearing that. But yeah, I'd agree that people probably are better at hearing words, but then not getting the tone or the subtext or the inflection that probably reveals a lot more to the meaning behind the words, or the indication that there's more that they're not saying, or kind of between the lines, that is really important for if you're trying to communicate clearly and actually listen and to understand them, that a lot of people miss just because they haven't flexed that muscle enough. It's kind of atrophied.
Yeah. Well, and I think for a lot of people, it wasn't welcomed, right? Our feelings weren't accepted or welcomed in. I think for many business owners, there's still a feeling that, well, maybe that's not relevant. Like I was in one conversation and a person said to me, she was describing a person in her business who was saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I said to her, that means that you were likely connecting with the words, but not with the feeling behind. And that's what that person was looking for. And she's like, well, I can't just tell her, well, you're obviously frustrated. You know, she was afraid of actually bringing that to light. But in fact, that was what was stopping her from making that connection and moving the conversation forward. So interesting, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like, I'm sure you have a bunch of great stories of people you've worked with on how to improve on their active listening skills. What are some of those success stories you've had that you're particularly proud of?
The one that I'm most proud of is a woman who took inbound sales in a medical company. And she sat down with me one day and she was so frustrated that she wasn't making sales fast enough to meet her quota for the business that she was in. And she said to me, people get on calls with me and they just want to talk about their day. They just want to talk about their problems. And she's like, and I just need to sell them the thing and move on to the next call. And she went on and on and on. And so I quite simply listened for about 10 minutes while she wound all that down. And then I said, would you be open to a suggestion? And at that point, because I had listened to all of those feelings, I'd reflected back, I'd heard the words, I'd connected with all of that. She goes, yes. Yes, tell me what I'm not seeing. And I said to her, if you begin with those calls when they come in to reflect back to the feeling, mirror that feeling, it's real subtle. It's very subtle. So that call comes in and, you know, you're getting started. And they say, oh man, it's been a rough day. And you go, oh yeah, I've had those kind of really hard days too. I really get it. That must be, you know, uncomfortable for you today. Boom, you're done. That person's now ready to move on and they're ready to make that sale because they've been heard. It's amazing. So the success of her was an immediate wow. So she actually was offered a promotion in like a month later. She's applying this technique. Her sales immediately went up and it was like, boom, like that for her. It was really fantastic.
Well, so that's amazing turnaround time just from applying the simple practice of mirroring the emotions and listening to what people are saying and how they're saying it and showing that you understood them, you heard them, and you understand their feelings enables sales more than just pushing through and trying to force it, huh?
Absolutely. She told me that at the end of the call, people were like, can I have your direct line? Can I just talk to you?
Yeah. Especially in like B2B sales. On episode 4, I talked with a sales, sales guy and who uses curiosity and kind of build these relationships. And it's amazing how much gets done in the B2B space when you start just connecting with the people that you're dealing with on the other end of the phone call or other end of the Zoom call, and just connect like people and not like a business to business. It's really, like I said in the intro, H to H. And when people feel like you're connecting with them, I think it's really cool. They get their personal line and whenever it's a relationship, not just a transaction. And I think so many businesses think of B2B as transactional, but it's really relationships and much longer ones because of how long the sales cycle can take, that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah, and just being comfortable with that relationship and letting it build and not needing it to produce something right away. Obviously, in her role, it was going to produce something right away because it was an inbound sales line. So that's a bit different. But nevertheless, when you apply that curiosity that you just mentioned, that's a part of what I teach in my course. I talk about the core of listening, and that questioning comes under relating. And yeah, it's very, very powerful.
So you mentioned you have this program, and like, what's kind of, if someone hears this story and goes, oh my gosh, I'm totally having the same issue, I need to get better at listening. What's the kind of first few steps people can take to start strengthening their active listening muscles?
So before you can really hear someone else, you have to be calm, because if you're not calm, you're not able to access the prefrontal cortex part of your brain. It's required to be able to really hear someone else. So that's what I teach first. Is the first thing to establish every single time you move into a conversation is you need to be relaxed and calm. And so that means if you're a salesperson and you're going into a sales call, you need to not be worried about, oh, I have to make this close because I need to make my quota. That has to not be on your mind at all. You just have to be calm, relaxed, and ready to listen, and make sure that you're taking the time to put yourself in that space ahead. So that's the first piece, is to be calm. And then the next piece I teach is what outcome is it that you're looking for from the conversation. I think a lot of times people forget to think about that ahead. And if we're talking specifically to sales, the outcome is highly likely you want to just sell to the next level. You're not looking to close a sale. A lot of times people jump all the way to the close. Don't do that. What's the next step? Only sell to the next step. So, yeah.
So I love that people have to be calm first, because otherwise the prefrontal cortex isn't engaged and they're not able to listen at all. Is there particular like breathing techniques, or kind of what's the way you found that helps calm people down, especially if they're like at work and obviously can't just like bust out a yoga mat and meditate for 10 minutes. Like, what's some of like a quick way, like, okay, I have like 5 minutes before a call or 2 minutes, what can they do to try and achieve that mental state before they dive into a call?
One of the things I like to do is to use the sense of smell, because it activates another part of the brain. And so I use smell. I like lavender, but their eucalyptus for men tends to work really well. There are other scents. Just find something that you like that feels like it relaxes and activates your brain. Obviously, breathing is a really great way. And I think it's really about setting the intention. Like, get in mind the intention that you have to be relaxed, calm, and happy, and to bring your best self to the table when you enter into the conversation. I did that before our call today.
I can tell you seem very relaxed. So I think we've been focusing on the sales side of things, and I'm sure to get kind of hook back into the initial stat you gave about people wanting clear communication at work, I'd imagine a lot of that has to come from like the leadership team to their kind of direct reports and all the way through. What are some of the things that leaders can do to become better active listeners for their like direct supports and their teams? What's some suggestions for them?
So what I have noticed as I've interacted with others is there tends to be so many tasks on the part of the leadership. They're so busy with so many things. When somebody comes to you and indicates that they have something to share, if you can find a way to switch into a very focused zone to be able to see and hear the person in front of you, and so that they really know that. That may be something simple. So say for example, they came up to you in the hallway. You can shift your body language and really dial in, because it's so important that they feel seen and heard with all the other things going on. You have to eliminate distraction in order to really hear somebody and to really understand the content and the emotions. If you're really going to actively listen, you got to do that. So how do you do that when there's all this other stuff around? So shift your body, focus. And if you can't do that, if there's too much stuff, then make the time. Then be clear with them and say, look, right now I have too many things going on. Can we meet in 5 minutes in my office, or can, whatever it is. But then don't try to have a conversation that is requires more in a situation where that focus isn't attainable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I think when you said the body language, I think you're talking about like kind of squaring the shoulders so you're facing them, have your feet facing them, really making eye contact, and because I think a lot of times people, I mean, it's fun to watch on TV with like the walk and talk scenes, and people are moving around and zipping through an office and talking and stuff. But I think in reality, people, if you're doing that, you're not focusing on the other person you're talking to, and so the connection doesn't happen. And so I think just being aware of the direction your feet are pointed, and your shoulders, and eye contact, and and the mental focus on, okay, I'm gonna give your full attention to this person, is, even if it's just like 30 seconds to set up another meeting, I think those little physical things you do with your body indicate to other people, even if on a subconscious level, okay, they're listening to me right now. And even if we don't get to address the issue immediately, we're setting something up later, but at least for those 30 seconds, I had their attention.
Yep.
And that goes a long way for, obviously it doesn't fix all the issues right away, but it builds the trust with the team members, because they're feeling that you're actually listening to them. And it's a lot of it can be, even if you're like, you think you are mentally, if your body language doesn't match it, people will still key into, they were still like facing the screen, or they were still walking away from you. Like there's a lot of the physicality that people read into subconsciously, and people project messages subconsciously, that if you're just aware of how you're facing people or not, that can be a huge difference for building that sort of the feeling of being heard in your team. Is that right?
It is absolutely right. I had a manager myself when I was working at the funeral home, and most of the time he was walking around, he had his phone, he had his, and he was doing 3 other things while he was talking to somebody. I found it very distracting and difficult to interact with him, because I often felt he didn't hear me. But there was one day that I had never done this before, but I had a conflict with another employee. And I went up to his office and I said, "Are you available to hear me now? Because I really need to say this thing before I explode." And it was like, Deb doesn't usually explode, right? It's like, I was pretty ticked off. And so I had his attention, and it was very obvious. He put his phone away, he turned in his desk, and he dialed in directly to me. And I knew without a doubt that he understood this was important, and I had his attention, and he was going to hear me out. It was so important in that moment. I would have quit that day. I mean, if he hadn't done that, I would have walked. And so I think it's so important that managers are able to hear that when an employee is bringing it.
And then know to not just say they're listening, but show with their body that the employee has their attention. Because that's it can seem like, oh, I was listening, but you just couldn't tell. It's like, well, it's the part that they couldn't tell you were listening that is going to cause them, like you said, to leave, or to blow up and have and escalate the conflict instead of deflating it, because it's, they don't feel seen or heard or understood. And even if you were trying to, it's how you execute and how it's perceived, not just what you're intending to do.
That particular manager also asked clarifying questions to me in there, so I knew he was hearing me. He asked very specific questions, and he also reflected back my feelings. So in all of that, in an engagement with him, he showed me that he did, in fact, know how to do it right. When he was walking around the office, he wasn't doing it all the time. So, I mean, I think if the number one desire is good communication of your employees, when somebody presents you one like that, make sure you don't mess up. Be sure that when those intents happen, be certain. But I would also say that it's just as important when you're interacting wherever you are, on the floor or wherever.
Yeah, I think it's important to practice the right way of doing things before it becomes one of those key, this person's going to leave if you screw this up moments, so that you're more likely to respond accordingly and not botch the interaction and lose a key team member because we default to kind of our habits and the things we're most used to. So if you're not used to the act of listening and I don't have that muscle built up, then you might love it in a really important moment. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Deb. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Deb, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.